Buenas tardes. Pero disculpa que yo va a hablar en inglés porque no he hecho esta práctica nunca, esta presentación en español todavía, entonces disculpa. En el título está hablando de la, perdón, influencia de tu experiencia como profesional y la evolución de conceptualización de tu modelaje geológico. I'm sorry, I'm doing it Spanglish. All right. As a geology and ore deposits vary regionally, your geological conceptual experiences that you obtain acquiring through your field exposure during your work will vary from region to region. So if you only work in Cabo Roca and Costa de Mar de Cortez, will be very different experiences than you're only working in Zacatecas, for example. So if you work in multiple regions, you're going to get multiple experiences and multiple concepts on ore deposits and geology. Por ejemplo, los pórfidos de cobre molibdeno en la costa sur de Southern Peru, de nuestra presentadora antes, de Southern Peru Copper, que es ahora Grupo México, son distintos a los pórfidos the copper gold porphyries found in the main Andean cordillera of Peru. These experiences then in turn influence the geologists' modeling and interpretation for their exploration on projects. The knowledge acquired of geological processes and deposit types from non-related deposits or distant regions in space and geological time assists in the adaptation of deposit models when confronted with imperfect or unexpected variations. You may see something you don't understand, but you may see something else different that kind of works in the same way. Experiences with Mississippi Valley type deposits, for example, the collapse breccias assist you in understanding and working with the collapse breccias found in the Carlin type deposits. Okay, it's the same basic mechanics. Both are in the carbonate sediments. This is demonstrated for the author, this variation of regional experiences after a grassroots discovery at Tres Cruces in northern Peru. We had, at that point, 61 drill holes delineating a significant gold resource. During the early exploration stages, the initial geologic model evolved significantly a few times as more data was acquired and incorporated into the new project models. We basically drastically changed the model. Drastically changed it 3 times. Let me go back. And sometimes it was contradictory to the previous model. And I just want to mention Wayne Livingston, who was with me in the discovery, the famous Phoebe Hoff of TerraSpec's fame that some of us know here, and was the main person that pushed TerraSpec and its predecessor Pima, and David Mashburn of Battle Mountain Gold. And they all helped advance the initial years of Tres Cruces. This project was then presented after the first 61 drill holes to 10 major gold mining companies for its investment in a joint venture. During the process of showing the project in meetings, core shed, and site visits, it became obvious that the geologists participating had distinct conceptualizations of the project's geologic model. And those variations between them was demarcated, was shown by their regional experiences, which was kind of interesting for me to see that. Tres Cruces is up in north central Peru, and it has, make sure I do this right up here. It is south of Yanacocha, about 300 kilometers. And within this is the major part of the La Libertad gold province. There's a couple other deposits, Shiwindo, a couple others in this area, but right in here, there's over 50 million ounces that have either been produced or defined by drilling. All of these guys have had modern production. Kirivilka is the only one that's underground. All these others are open pits. Tres Cruces up in central La Libertad is at an elevation roughly 4,000 meters in the Puna biome. Looks like nice grass. It isn't nice grass. It's ichu. It's a very lousy grass for the pasto, for the ganao. So there's a few small grazing holdings, and they're organized in comunidad. And it was examined by a very few modern companies prior to the discovery with negative impressions. This is the pre-discovery model, and you gotta excuse my artwork from 20 odd years ago. What you had is some very minor pre-Columbian and post-colonial artisanal mining activities exposed. You had, the model that people had was that you had overthrust sheets in the Cretaceous Chamu with interlayered sheets of the Calipui volcanics. Calipui is upper tertiary, so from 30 million years and younger. You had some argillic alteration, and you had a little sliver limestones preserved. I got onto the piece of ground here. I'd seen it before, flying around in helicopters, but then in '95 I was able to visit the first time. I landed on what is now the North Zone, and that's this little hill here, and that's where the artisanal workings prospects were. And we landed on there. We had about 30 or 40 minutes, and if any of you have run helicopter programs, time is very expensive. And so we only had 30, 40 minutes, and it was just part of a recon, generally, regionally, that we're just looking every day at 10 or more prospects every day. And so we took, we could see that it was in andesitic pyroclastics, but, and later on we have gotten an age date around 23 million years. What was and it's also an ancient crossroads. That's why it's called named Tres Cruces, because it's an old crossroads that people have been using for millennia. And the average of the 4 samples that were collected was over 500 ppb gold, which, if you're looking for gold, is kind of interesting. And this was, it's basically the way it is right now, though they're starting here in the last year or so with a new company. But we basically, this is the discovery landing, well, not the discovery outcrops, we landed here. But you have the North Zone, the South Zone, Southwest Zone, and the Cardoso Zone, named after the family that lives there, very nice people. On the west side, you have post-mineral volcanics covering up stuff. So the initial recon model, after 30 minutes on the ground, we came in and we said, well, we got some chamu here. We still thought the limestones were chamu, and with quartzites underneath, and with the Calipui volcanics. And I thought at that time this was high sulfidation in a breccia pipe with high sulfidation. The actual outcrops that were sampled on were breccias, hydrothermal breccias. And all through Peru, you have these hydrothermal breccias, high sulfidation systems, and you usually have a intrusive source right near it, on the near the surface or not too far at depth, anywhere up maybe to a kilometer at depth. We could see that there was an area of 500 meters by 500 meters, which was enough with 4 samples running 500 ppb. That was enough to warn us to come back. We came back 2 months later, again by helicopter. We didn't have the time to come in by land. And this is a picture after the drill roads were put in and stuff. So we came in and I brought in 2 full crews, and we took a lot of samples on this thing. It turned out the vugs that I thought were high sulfidation alunite vugs that had gotten washed out were actually breccia class in the hydrothermal breccia, and then the matrix was highly silicified, remained. And so but it looks just like the same as what you get with alunite washing out. And so there came the first big change. And by then, when we came back in and we got our samples run with Terraspec, we had alunite, we had adularia, and we had silica. We didn't have high sulfidation, we had low sulfidation. So there's now another complete change in your model. The horse of Chemu, I looked at just beyond this outcrop there, you can actually see these what are lacustrine limestones, not oceanic deep sea limestones. These are lacustrine, like a geyser field like you see in Yellowstone or in New Zealand. There's probably some nice remnant paleo geyser fields here in Mexico, but I don't know of them. And we considered at that point that these silicified rocks were jasperoids of silicification of the limestones. And then we have, and you can see they're all brecciated up, and so again, assuming hydrothermal brecciation. But we found, on that pass, we found that the jasperoids continued for more than 2 kilometers to the south. So we have significant, not 500 meter by 500 meter system. We've got a 2 kilometer by 1 kilometer system at a minimum. So it's 8 times bigger. So we have, we got a lot of potential. We got a lot of silica. We got a lot of fluid flow. What was very interesting, we also could see in the silicified rocks here, we found a lot of cinnabario, a lot of cinnabar in small veinlets and in disseminations within it. And we were found andesitic, post-mineral andesitic volcanics overlying the mineralization. Now, if you can imagine, all of you who have worked with the Sierra Madres, you see there's a tremendous amount of erosion here. The erosion is very active and very ongoing in the Andes as well. So to see rocks that are quite old with near surface characteristics is very uncommon in the Andes because they're mostly all eroded away. So the other thing we found was extensive, here in the South Zone, extensive pre-Columbian excavations and tool making finding silicified. What we later found were rhyodacite domes. They weren't jasperoids. So on the second recon model, just before I say on the rhyodacite domes, we expanded the area from 2 kilometers by 1 kilometer, 8-fold expansion. The epithermal high sulfidation had become low sulfidation. The limestones were confined to lacustrine sediments, thin lacustrine sediments, and not a thick plug of Chemu age limestones. It was still thought that this was a distal zoning, low sulfidation zoning, to the high sulfidation system at Curavilca, which is only a kilometer in media to the west-northwest. And we found breccias all along that 2-kilometer stretch of what we were considering jasperoids at that point. And I was considered by myself to be large enough potential to warrant a real exploration program, but the major outfit that I was working for decided not to continue that. What happened next was, after a while, I actually jumped to a junior from a major, and I mentioned it to the junior I was working about because the major was not interested, and so the junior picked it up and associated with Pan American Silver for one portion of the property and made a JV out of it. And then for the next 2 years, the JV worked hard on drilling. We drilled 61 drill holes. But what happened during that next 2 years, the jasperoids became superficial rhyolite dacite domes, just like what you see all around in southern Peru and in Bolivia. You had the domes right on the surface, and you had this paleo geyser field with high mercury and basically no gold at all on the outcrops. We found with drilling at 40 meters depth. Whoops, I'm sorry. We find at 40 meters depth, we started getting gold deposition, and significant gold deposition. It changed like within 2 or 3 meters from nothing to grams, anywhere from 1 gram to multiple grams of grade, and that zone was oxidized. Probably the main reason being that the silica here has a good porosity permeability for the water to flow through it. Underneath it, we had argillic silicic altered andesites. Those were all sulfides. And in that horizon, we had a high orpiment realgar arsenic zone, approximately 30 meters thick. Now, the orpiment realgar is after the gold stage. It's still one of your primary hydrothermal stages, but it's right after your gold mineralization. So it doesn't come with the gold. It's right afterwards. The veins were found we found veins with native gold, banded chalcedonic quartz, and we also found rhodochrosite and calcite in the veins. What we do find in the silicification, and it's kind of hard to see, but in the class, you see the breccia class from phreatic explosive activities, is that you've got buddingtonite, which is a form of adularia that has ammonia in its crystal structure. So it's one of the very few feldspars that work with your terraspec. And what we found was that the crystallinity signature on the buddingtonite could tell you within 5 meters where you were at plus 0.5 grams. Interesting little sidebar. We also found illite was close with the gold, and also rutile was going with the gold. And one really neat thing here, confirming the idea that these are lacustrine, that we found large fossil bones of large mammals from land, like horses and deer. And in the limestones, we found drying cracks and raindrop marks, and also interbeds of rhyodicitic tuff in the limestone layers. So now we've gone through our 4th model over a period of 2 years. And so again, this is after 61 drill holes. This is after a lot of work on the things. But the one important thing is the limestones are lacustrine now. They're underlaid by rhyolitic tuffs, rhyodicitic tuffs. You got low sulfidation, argillic alteration all around it. We have the breccia pipes everywhere, and somewhere down at depth we have a feeder. And at this point, we still we're considering it just all volcanics in here underneath. We also had established that from our drilling that about a quarter of the deposit we were guessing was maybe 1.2 million ounces was refractory, 75% refractory, 25% oxidized. That's where we were. It was definitely all epithermal, and then came to the crucial part in any development by a junior company. What are you going to do? We found it. How we're going to keep it advancing. And so we decided to farm it out. And out of that farm out process, developed multiple models on the thing. So we presented it to 10 major mining companies, gold mining companies. And all of them took a look at it on the ground. And I got to do the dog and pony show with all 10 of them, one at a time, over a period of 2 months. It was a very neat experience, wonderful people to meet, great geologists. But what happened is that it turned out that after doing the same process 10 times in a row, we ended up with 3 types of models. And it was like the Aussies went this way, the guys from the States and the Caribbean experience went this way, and some kind of went in between, and on these 3 models. And that was really interesting to me because they had their basic experience levels. And so one was, and I'll go show you real quickly these models, but it was just really, really interesting. One was a Lihir model. One was a Southwest Pacific pencil porphyry models. And then the other one is Mar diatremes. And they're all kind of like different from each other, okay? It wasn't just a minor difference between them. And this is with 61 drill holes already in the ground. So just think about that. You have all these 61 drill holes. You can show them the outcrops. You can show them, but they all came up with their ideas, and that's okay. But it was because they had their own experiences. So a Lihir type model is if anybody knows anything about Lihir, Lihir was a porphyry system on an island called Lihir off the coast of New Guinea, and it blew up while the porphyry process was forming. The porphyry stockworking process hadn't terminated, and it blew up. It got decapitated. All right, and that's, I've worked with some decapitated systems in my past, and so that was kind of interesting to hear that. And so again, they were saying that, okay, you have a stockwork porphyry here, it's blown up, you've got all these breccias and geyser field and all this kind of stuff around it. All right, that works. They also, with Lihir, is interesting, it has a high refractory low sulfidation system. And they were saying, okay, you got, I didn't really see on ours that we have a potassic porphyry stuff, but that was their model, okay, that you have an overprinted telescope system with alkalic epithermal breccias. That's cool. And now, Lihir, for example, has roughly 42 million ounces at 2 1/3 grams gold, you know, so it's a nice model to work with. And since we're looking at a feature that's 2 kilometers by 1 kilometer in size, it could hold something that big. Next model is a Southwest Pacific pencil porphyry types system. And again, you've got certain characteristics. You got the porphyries coming up, and the main porphyry body branches out into like fingers or pencils coming off the main porphyry body. As it gets near to the surface, you get all the features of jasperoids and in the limestones and phreatic breccias, and very, very similar. And then, I'm sorry for my lousy drawings, but I'm not a great artist. The Mar diatreme, and I've worked with a couple Mar diatremes in my career. And so the most famous is Pueblo Viejo in the Dominican Republic. They also have Cerro de Pasco in Peru, Rio Blanco in Peru, and Cripple Creek in Colorado. They're all Mar diatremes. They're all diatremes, hydrothermal breccias of more than 1 kilometer in diameter. And they can be high sulfidation, they can be low sulfidation, but they're generally characterized by superficial rhyolitic domes, and you get lacustrine features in the middle, I'm sorry. And then I apologize. I went the wrong way. And then you get the lacustrine sediments, and you get the Mars sediments as well on the sides. And you get veins with them, and disseminations, and breccia pipes, and breccia dikes, and all that. So that matches very closely. So people out of the States who have experience with Cripple Creek or Pueblo Viejo, they like this model, okay? And so, and the guys out of Australia, some like Lihir, others like the Southwest Pacific chain pencil porphyry models. All right. Let me see what I got here. So we farmed it out to Battle Mountain Gold, which if you don't know of the company, they don't really exist anymore, but they were out of the States, and they picked up the property. They ran a 2-year project, and so they drilled an additional 106 drill holes. I worked with them on that project. While I still was working for the junior, they farmed me out to the major. And then one important thing is that we demonstrated during that process that Tres Cruces was 8 million years older than the high sulfidation Curavilca system, and that the identical looking volcanics are just totally different age. And that was very interesting to find it out. It was confirmed that the sulfides were refractory, and Battle Mountain's Gold's bioleaching test down at Coricollo in Bolivia was suboptimal. But I have my own opinions of that, because the darn sulfides fell apart within 2 to 3 months sitting in the Corp box. They all disintegrated, the core disintegrated. So I think they can disintegrate if you just let the local bacteria have fun with it. The resources at that point were estimated 1.6 million ounces with about 1.6 million grams of gold. And then Battle Mountain dropped out of it, basically because of the refractory problem, because they didn't want to approach it in an autoclave or whatever methodology. All right, the second phase model, it again was discovered it was separate than Curavilca. It's rhyodicitic domes, but we did find out really important. Oh my God, don't have my pointer here. This is not working, I apologize. That's what you get for not practicing. So here is an intrusive, andesitic intrusive that was found in core drilling. It's underlying the darn lake, and so what's happening is that you get a ring of these silica domes ringing around this unmineralized, or at best propylatized intrusive. So this is a pre-mineral intrusive, and it's just ringing it around it. And the mineralization is coming up with the breccias from depth in here and to the sides, and it's still a fairly big system. And I had a fella who was one of the foremost archaeologists, and he looked at the pieces from the pre-Columbian workings, and he estimated that the pieces are 8,000 to 10,000 years old plus. So that has to be taken and considered. The next thing is current status. It was JV'd with Barrick from 2002 to 2019. They did another 2002 drill holes in it. A total at that point of 73,000 meters have been drilled into it. The resources as of now are 2.5 million ounces of 1.65 grams gold, but they're growing. Barrick left the JV, Oro Peru got it back, and Antiquaries picked it up last year. And they're currently drilling with, actually look at their press site, and they're doing quite well. So it's still growing. Now, to tie it into something else down here in Mexico, same process. Cervantes that we're at Aztec, we're running. Cervantes, oh no, I just keep doing this habit of mine. Come on now, there we go. Cervantes is right here, between La India Mulatos and San Antonio de Hocico, and it's been worked on by Aztec and Kootenai. Now it's all wholly owned by Aztec since 2016, 2015. This is just an overview of the project. It's roughly 3,600 hectares. We have multiple quartz feldspar porphyry intrusives. We have some diatreme bodies, but this is where most of our activities is on the California target, which is right here, which is a lot of quartz. Feldspar porphyry is there. There's a picture of it. It's now 100% owned. We consider it a gold-copper porphyry target. We have a lot of geochemistry, a lot of geology and geophysics, and we've got 11,000 meters roughly now of core and RC drilling in it. We have drilled a significant gold resource is on the top of this ridge. This ridge basically is 900 meters east-west, and from one end to the other, there's gold mineralization. There's basically, it's a no-strip situation. You'd have internal strip, but you wouldn't have any external strip sitting on top of it. And let's see, what else? We're constantly changing our models. In fact, with my senior geologist, partner in crime, Ivan Valencia, if he's around here somewhere, we're constantly reviewing and discussing our modeling because we're always finding new things. And it's not a simple porphyry. We're up high in the system. So you can see this is our drilling as of April of this year. It doesn't have our latest drilling. We just finished another 11 holes and close to 3,000 meters on this as step outs. But we're focusing on the ridge, obviously, and we're doing big step outs, few hundred meters every which way, just to see what we can find, and it's actually keep growing the system. The system is growing. Okay, one thing of interest is that this is an air mag map, and you notice that there's a mag low here, and with porphyries you want to find the mag low. And lo and behold, this is great thickness, and we got the best values right on the edge here of the mag low. And so that's a nice little coincidence. And we haven't done drilling up there in the north hardly at all. So that's areas that we have to keep defining. Okay. This doesn't look like it's telescoped. I've worked with a lot of telescope systems in the Andes, and it doesn't look like telescope system like I see in the Andes. It more looks like it wasn't telescoped, and so it looks like we were at the actual top of the porphyry system. We have UST textures right on the top of that ridge. We have a little body of UST, unidirectional solidification textures, thank you. And so that always is at the top of the magmatic feature of the intrusive. So we're on top of that, but also by the alteration mineralization, we're on the top of it. We have, on this ridge, we have a lot of silicification. We have relatively high arsenic, relative for a porphyry system, high arsenic values. A little bit of bismuth. We have no remnant high sulfidation alteration per se, but we do have a little bit of its fuel of the geochemistry. And then we start going down in here, we start getting into phyllic and stuff like that. And so it's complicated. We have bodies, the sediments in here. Some of them are just big clasts that have been moved around, and others are got a little bit more roots in them, so it's a little bit complicated. The multiple branches and dikes was kind of separate orientations, and so I don't know if some of you people knew Brad Cook, who was our founder, and Brad and I were talking about pencil porphyries 5-6 months ago, and we had to be thinking about that. He said, we got to think about this. I said, okay, I'll start thinking about it. And the other day when I was putting the front part of the talk, I said, yeah, okay, I'm really thinking about it. And so that was one of the contributions I think Brad made. He always had good points, and he was a good man to work for. And so the other thing is, just as these branches and dikes of quartz feldspar porphyry going through, and we also have a feldspar porphyry, so we have two porphyry storage stages, but the one that's carrying the value seems to be the quartz feldspar porphyry. As that's coming up, we also have the alteration halos are discordant. And it's not a nice, simple Lowell and Gilbert model, and God rest both of their souls because they were both friends. But it's discordant. It's not a simple model. Multiple breccia types, tectonic, magmatic, hydrothermal, multiple stages of hydrothermal, and so that goes on. So one problem we had was multiple incomplete geologic interpretations. So like somebody would map one portion of the hill and somebody would map another portion of the hill, and it wasn't really done in a unified fashion. Okay, this is just a picture of the UST textures found in the ridge. We just mentioned about it, but it's basically formed generally of quartz. Sometimes they have feldspars in them, and they're up at the top of the magmatic intrusive. It's the magmatic cupola top. And that basically, it tells you that you're at the top of the porphyry system and you're at the top where the initial magmatic volatiles are before you start getting the hydrothermal system being formed. Well, that's no good. Does it do it again? Okay. One thing that, from a lot of experience with breccias and with, especially the hydrothermal breccias, look for micro breccias. Now, some of you guys have seen them. Here's an example. This part of the picture here, that's a tourmaline-rich micro breccia. That's almost true width of in this picture. So it's a centimeter or so wide, tourmaline-rich hydrothermal breccia in another stage, an older stage of hydrothermal breccia in California. Kilometer and a half away, you got the same thing being formed. And I've seen these. So you always keep your eye out for micro breccias. At Las Lagunas Norte, that breccia, the Barrick used to run, I found these guys carrying half gram to 1 gram gold values kilometer away from the big breccia pipe, before the big breccia pipe was found. We knew it was there. We were finding the breccias, we just had to find where it was. Extensive hydrothermal breccias. I would say of the igneous material that we have, half of the material at a minimum is hydrothermal breccias. And you can tell hydrothermal breccias, besides the multiple clasts floating around in them and multiple types of clasts, what's for me the primary key definition for a hydrothermal breccia that you can't make by any other means is you have a mineralized clast within a mineralized class. You can't do it any other way besides a hydrothermal breccia. Anyway, quartz feldspar porphyry intrusive is our baby that we like so much. We find it very often highly silicified. We do find that we get a barren shoulder effect. Again, we're high up in the porphyry system, so we do get a barren shoulder effect here. And some just typical pictures of the quartz feldspar porphyry with its stockworks and disseminations. We get some phyllic, not super strong sericitic phyllic, but we have phyllic. And so we're right at the interval. Most of the gold seems to be right at the interval between the phyllic and the argillic, right where they kind of overlap with each other. We got tourmaline is a good guide for us. Phyllic is a good guide. Silicification is always a good guide. We're also getting specular hematite as a guide to us, but it's not like as present as the tourmaline is. And this is the wrap up. It's complex. The California intrusive complex presents many interpretive challenges. It's we're constantly testing our models because if we sat pat on it, we're a small company. We can't burn money just because of my pride. And And so we're constantly reviewing and sometimes discarding our models. And an important point is that models, like any plan, everybody knows what happens with plans. They usually don't go all the way through without major changes. So that they're a static picture in time, and they must conform to the new data that's being accumulated and evolving as you're exploring and understanding, and that the data must not be made to conform to the models. You got to do the reverse. And thank you for your time.